Right, well, hello, welcome to yet another episode of Desert Island Drams here on Whisky and Cynicism. My name's Simon Smith. I'm joined this week by Sam Simmons, who's head of whisky at Drams. Very thrilled to have him along with a wealth of experience and knowledge in the industry. So, firstly, Sam, welcome along. And have you got a whisky in front of you at the minute?
I don't yet, and I knew you were going to ask me that right off the top because I've watched these before, and I'm not really in a whiskey mood right now. I know that maybe that sounds. What do you do when you're not in a whiskey mood?
I mean, I tend to get a beer, or I chuck a lot of ice and something else at my whiskey is the other thing. But or even rum. I quite like a rum on an afternoon. But there we go. I mean, yeah, you've got plenty of rum around with Boutique, surely.
That's a good idea. That's what I'll do. Thank you. What do you have?
Well, actually, you might appreciate this. I'm on a 1990s bottling of the old Black Bottle blend, which is and I'll probably might get on to why you might appreciate that in a bit, but it's obviously a bit of a cult favorite, and we all love the old recipe Black Bottle, so enjoying one of those. I guess the first thing I wanted to ask you is, I mean, you obviously hail from Toronto, Canada originally. You worked in Edinburgh for a time for my employers, Run My Whiskies. You're down south now. I first met you in Sydney when you were out there with Balvenie. There's you obviously see a lot of the world, and you've done things like raw whiskey blends. Just seeing the way various cultures approach whiskey, does that give you some clarity as to kind of the best way to move forward in your own whiskey world, or is it more that you just have to notice there's a million and one ways to enjoy it, and they're all right in their own way?
Both? All? How many things did you ask there? Yes. The answer is yes.
Okay.
No, but I think the short answer is yes, but the longer answer is I was reading. You shouldn't read your own critics, but I was trying to collate some reviews for some of our more recent whiskeys, and I noticed a consistency amongst all of them, which is that people are saying, especially with the Isla whiskeys, the blended whiskeys, the World Whiskey Blend, Darkness, that the whiskeys are really drinkable, as if that's a bad thing. Short finish makes you want to drink a lot. Okay, well, remember, that's what most people do. And I got into whiskey in Edinburgh, where I was in a whiskey club. I would go to the Royal Mile Whiskies and try to learn from the people working there. I'd go to Cadenheads. I was part of a whiskey society. I was part of the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society. And you'd sit around and you go, oh, yes, oh, divine, oh, apricots, oh, indeed. And there's a time and place for the nerding out, but that's probably, honestly, that level of engagement is probably 1% of all the whiskey sold in the world. I would say the majority of, and that's a malt whiskey, right? Most malt whiskey, actually even malt whiskey is enjoyed on the rocks in volume by people. So to sit and write your blog, it's a tiny little group of people. So traveling around the world and seeing a nightclub in China, where there were young women and men with Ballantines and Chivas on their bar, on their table at a bar with mixers. First of all, they're drinking Scotch. I never saw that in Scotland. In Edinburgh, no one was drinking Scotch. No one was sharing it around a table, and it was being consumed and enjoyed at that level. And that's inspired a lot of the stuff we've done at Adam over the last couple of years. And it always reminded me and grounded me in the way we think about whiskey, that it is just a drink. Most people are sitting and enjoying it for its flavor, of course, but they're not necessarily analyzing it and evaluating it. So take it easy. It's just whiskey.
Yeah, I think probably in the home market, we can maybe level up from the way other countries approach it in a more kind of general and casual way than sometimes, as you say, some of those societies or whatever at home, where it's always got to be, you got to think about every single thing you ever drink.
Yeah, exactly. You have to be able to answer and show some discerning spirit why you've chosen this or that. Well, no, it's just, I'm drinking Chivas tonight with my buddies.
Absolutely. I mean, that kind of almost leads me a bit on to what I was going to ask you about, which is you have put a lot on the market recently between all those drams you mentioned before, the Darkness and Green Isle and bits and pieces, stuff that to me it has a huge relevance in its place on, for instance, someone's shelf as opposed to simply in the market. The Darkness for me was a favorite one because I just love to be able to pick up something that is just sherried, it's big, it's meaty. I can pour half a glass full and watch Keanu Reeves avenge the death of another dog. It's just kind of an easy drink. And you say you don't have to analyze it. You don't have to have a cast strength rarity every time. Do you think we're going to see more of that in the whiskey industry, or do you think we're just, that 1% is too addicted to the analytical side?
Well, I don't think we need to see more. I mean, I want to, it's from an independent bottler or craft level, craft blending level. I hope we see more of it. I think the stuff that Douglas Lang and obviously Compass Box, the things that they do, those are drinks for drinking. And I think I'd love to see more of that come into the mainstream. But of course, Glenfiddich 12-year-old and Glenmorangie 10, people already drink malt whiskeys like that. And that's what they're for, right? They're for when you're looking for a easy, fruity style Speyside whiskey, Glenfiddich's the one on your shelf. When you're looking for a vanilla light style, you got Glenmorangie. When you want smoke, you go for Lefroy. So yeah, Green Isle is for that all-rounder blended Scotch. Johnny Walker impulse on your shelf, like you said, place on your shelf. Darkness, everyone who likes whiskey, they have a craving from time to time for that higher strength sherried style. Glenfarclas 105, Abelard Rabuna, whatever it might be. So Darkness is in that space. And I think, yeah, I do think of it as my, selfishly maybe, but as your shelf, as the shelf behind you. There are some rarities, there are some one-offs I can see up there, but there's also a Craig Ellachie 13 that you can buy again and again if you finish the bottle. And Glendeverin, that it should be like this, that there's lots of room in whiskey for all of these different drinking occasions and flavors. So yeah, that's one of the many ways we can choose to design whiskeys, and it's the one that we've chosen as a drinker.
There's nothing wrong with your eyes, mate. For anyone at home, that's the Devrin back there that Sam just managed to spot from all the way in London. I guess you do have the other side of it, don't you? Because your boutique releases are almost the polar opposite. A lot of them are one-off, small batch, not necessarily single cask. Some are, and they bring some really interesting and different style. Actually, we had one the other night in the kind of whiskey club. That's an excuse for three friends and I to get blasted on Zoom on a Tuesday night. We had this Craig Ellachie, which is a 9-year-old from you guys, bottle, 271 bottles, couple of casks, and it's so different. I mean, it's the 13. I love that. I love what they do. That's so different again because it's all American oak and it's a whole different way. Do you think that's part of the joy of that independent bottling, is bringing new styles of existing distilleries to the market?
Well, thanks for that, Simon, because that's actually a very important point. The only reason I think that I have license as a head of whiskey at Adam to do what I just said and make whiskeys for occasions and think of it like that is because we are already doing the boutique one-off, unrepeatable oddities. And we've been doing it well, since 8 years now, I think. We have a birthday coming up. But it's been, there's a reputation for boutique and for independent bottlers to do rare one-offs, and we already do that. We've got the funky labels. We've got every Craig Ellachie we've ever done is different from the one before. Some are absolute crackers as well, as an example. But yeah, you're right. We already do that. And we do it well. There's no reason to sort of make another line like that within our range. Instead, we're trying to carve new areas in the whiskey drinkers, drinking repertoire. And yeah, that's a good point to raise. Thanks. Yeah.
No. So I mean, it's lovely to be able to see one company visioning the same side, on both sides of the same coin, the drinkers and the rarities. So I guess on that, I think we probably already touched on this a little bit, but what does annoy you most about the industry? I mean, the common theme for a lot of people is the overanalyzing of whiskey and also the non-drinking of whiskey, the kind of the collectible whiskey side, which I think pisses all of us off to an extent. Do you kind of of that realm, or do you have a different bugbear?
They probably are related, but I don't want to rehash things you've spoken about on the show before, or that we've even spoken about in person before. But I think there is something about connoisseurship that breeds snobbery. And we see it not just in whiskey, you see it in anything that people get into, and that there are layers of discernment associated with. I don't play Gibson. Gibson's going to go bankrupt. I don't play that kind of guitar. Oh, Taylor, they use bad wood. I don't drink. Oh, Craig Ellachie, they're owned by Dewar's. I won't drink that. Shut the fuck up and calm down. Is it a nice drink? Do you enjoy it? That's kind of the end of it. Let's stop. Let's stop doing that. And then what's worse is that we get with a little bit of knowledge and that the internet, I suppose, there's a lot of negativity getting spread around about whiskey. So that if you're new to whiskey, which when I was in 2002, when I moved to Edinburgh, if there was internet as rich as it is today. And the first thing I found when I started Googling, hey, I like Highland Park. Like Highland Park's one of the first whiskeys I liked. Let's try to read about it. And I Googled and said, oh, Highland Park sucks. All that Viking bullshit. Oh, we don't want to fucking drink that. If that's what I had encountered when I got into whiskey, I probably wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have continued. And we should be bringing people into whiskey and not pushing them away. That's the wrong attitude. But at the same time, I probably have a bugbear that we share is being in Instagram or Facebook and or on social media or in your inbox, getting hit with emails, investment grade whiskey. Buy your own cask. And we see that this is driving up prices crazy because we're getting capital, more and more is getting invested into casks as an investment that people need to flip a return on. So if someone's buying a 9-year-old Craig Ellachie, let's say, trying to get rid of it next year or after COVID because they need to liquidate some cash, selling it for an extortionate amount, an amount that the distillers will never buy it back for, that independent bottlers cannot afford to buy it back for because we couldn't sell a 10-year-old Craig Ellachie for 120 pounds, and that the only person who can buy it is another investor. So this bubble gets fuller and fuller, and that's a bit frightening and annoying. But again, it's not the whole industry. It's a small part. But overall, not a lot of bugbears. We're a very lucky community, I think, the whiskey world. It makes the world small, and we all, from Australia to Canada and all the other pink parts of the map and the rest of the map, we are all bound together by this amber nectar, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think we're very lucky as well because we get to work in what is essentially our hobby, which there's not too many folk who get to that. And, the whiskey snobbery thing, I'm in so much agreement. It's a bit, to me, it's like music snobbery. You talk about guitars. I've got a beautiful guitar over there that I've had for 15 years, and it's a brand no one's ever heard of, but I fucking love it. But also music snobbery is one of those things that, you're trying to tell me that I shouldn't like the sounds that are going into my ears. Do you realize how fucking stupid that sounds? And it's the same with whiskey, and you've got to be very careful the way you phrase this. But if you're telling me I shouldn't like the taste of something into my mouth, then you've elevated, you've deified yourself to an irrelevant level. It's not important. So I think we're all in agreement on that kind of side of things. But let's go to positivity now. And I think you might, as you said, find this one of the hardest questions. But of all the memories in whiskey, and they can sometimes be a minute, and then sometimes they can be a lifetime. But what is your favorite memory of whiskey in your 18 years of enjoying it?
It's too tricky, and probably some of my truest favorites I probably can't say on a recording that you're going to share on social media. One I think is funny is I'm from a family that we're not a drinking family. The family I grew up in Toronto, they're all still there. And when I first moved to Edinburgh and got into whiskey, I'd say probably several months after being in Edinburgh, when I would come home, I started running tastings for friends and family as a reason to share a bit of that knowledge and get everyone together, because I'm only, visiting Toronto for a week. I want to see everyone rather than going to everyone's house. Come over to my parents' place or whatever it was, and we'll share some whiskey. And my dad, who's not much of a drinker, because we talk about nosing and tasting, my dad would put whiskey on his hand and go like this and sort of smell it. And now all my buddies do that at home. And I think it's just funny. It's just one of those, it's a memory, or it's like a legacy thing it's a small thing that whiskey gave my home community that still lives on, so I have friends send me pictures or some more videos of them having a dram going, hey Sam, say your dad, and say hi. So that's funny. And then another strong memory is when I started really more professionally working with whiskey in 2008 after the Whisky Live in London, before I was going to move to New York to be the ambassador for Balvenie in the United States. It was Whisky Live in London, and Sukhinder Singh, who I did some work with, was having a little gathering after the festival, and we ended up back at his office, the old office, I think, and not the old. Anyway, and he, because I was going to Balvenie, eventually he brought out a Balvenie in the tennis racket bottle, Balvenie Classic it was called. It's got that shape. And John Glazer was there, and John Glazer, an independent, independent blender, and I was going to work for the big man, and I'd been an independent voice as Dr. Whiskey for a while and did some work with him and with Scotch Malt Whisky Society and independent companies. He ripped open the top. I don't know if Sukhinder was planning that, but anyway, he ripped open the top, drank right from the bottle, and he said, "Cheers to you, you fucking sellout." So that's the beginning of this path, and that's a memory that sticks with me too, because I am always conscious of just it was a nice reminder, and as it replays in my memory now, a reminder that what's important is that you stay true to whatever your arrow is. Why are you doing this? The passion of whiskey for the right reasons, not necessarily greed or commercial reasons, but for sharing and enjoying, to paraphrase John Glaser himself.
Absolutely, I think that's a very good point. And speaking of whiskey to share and enjoy, we're going to probably possibly even the hardest question is, what would be your 3 desert island drams that you would take to an isolated island for the rest of your life?
So if you're there the rest of your life, and I assume that will the bottle perpetually fill?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's a magical island. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not embarrassed to say I like blended Scotch whiskey. I like obviously like black bottle, but I drink a lot of Johnny Walker Black in the house. I made Green Isle to sort of be of that all-round style, which a bit of peat and heather and vanilla, but a bit of smoke, rubbery, meaty. It's the whole gamut of all that whiskey has to offer. So it's just an all-rounder, everyday sort of, I feel like a whiskey, and that ticks all the boxes. So I would need one like that. So for the sake of not promoting my own product too much, I would probably take a Johnny Walker, Black Label, 12-year-old. And then I would need probably 2 indulgences. Maybe I'll only do one. I don't know. Because Balvenie was really my first real foray into working with whiskey in a major way. Balvenie offered me so much, and I'm still so thankful for everything that opportunity gave me. Seeing the world, as you mentioned, and working closely with David Stewart, MBE, and all of the other people at Grants, that was incredible. So, and Balvenie Doublewood was also the first bottle I ever bought when I lived in Edinburgh. Forked over money for a bottle of booze, 25 pounds for a bottle of alcohol. What? I would never have done that before I moved to Scotland. And Doublewood was that bottle. Then I worked with them, and it's still that whiskey that is sort of soul food for me. It's a comforting meal. So I'd probably bring Doublewood as well. I get a bit of peat from the Johnny Walker. So I think I'd probably go to another one that was from Royal Mile Whiskies. I bought a group of us, I should say, years ago, bought a Balblair in the old livery, the old packaging. Balblair 38-year-old, I think it was. And I don't know what they go for now. I don't know what people have reviewed, what scores they've given them that whiskey over the years. But if I could go back and buy a bottle for myself, I would. But not just because the way it tasted. It tasted incredible and like nothing I'd ever tried. But it's a whiskey that opened my eyes to understand why people spend hundreds of pounds on bottles of whiskey. Because until then, 25, 30 pounds, whatever was on offer at the co-op, that was plenty. And like you, I had a group of friends, we'd throw a 5 or throw a 10 or get some nice bottles and have a tasting, or through the whiskey club or whatever it was. So having that Balblair 38-year-old, that just, I then suddenly in an instant understood why people spend 400 pounds on a bottle. I couldn't, that's far too much, but at least I suddenly understood what that was all about. And although I've probably had better whiskey since, it's not really about that. I think I'm trapped on a desert island. I want to remember what it was like back when we all lived together in the mainland.
It's interesting. I think all of us have one, if not many, and always refers back to that epiphanic moment where whiskey became something more than just a liquid. We realized there was a bigger world out there, and everyone kind of harks back to it. I must highlight as well the fact that you said David Stewart, MBE. I've worked with a lot with Ross Blaney, who was obviously on last week, and various people involved in Balvenie. I do love the way that anyone who's been there cannot say David Stewart without adding MBE at the end of it. Sorry, and I know it's in no way a brag, it's in no way a flex. It's just an inherent respect for that man. And I think that's lovely that whiskey does that to people. You elevate people. He's the most humble man in the world. It's not an ego thing. He just is a wonderful whiskey personality.
I think that's why we do it, though. I think that if he was a cocky prick like me, people wouldn't say MB at the end or Dr. Simmons. They would just say, "Oh, Sam." We would just say David.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he isn't the one to wear that himself. It's sort of our duty to use his name with reverence, And he's just the gentleman's one of the most generous people in all sorts of ways. That's funny. That's true. You're absolutely right, though. Guilty.
Yeah, I think it's lovely. Anyway, Simon, that's been a lovely chat, and some very, very good points made, some great whiskeys discussed. So I hope next time I see you, it's A, in real life, and B, you were actually in the mood for a whiskey, because I think we're definitely going to have one. But thank you so much for your time, mate, and I really appreciate having you on, and I'll see you soon. Slash, mate.
Take care, Simon. Thanks.
Cheers, mate.